In a big blow to the Bashar al-Assad government, a war monitor has claimed that the rebels have in fact started to surround the government-held capital city of Damascus. This is what is being claimed. The Syrian Defense Ministry, however, has rubbished these Western reports. It has also rubbished reports that the Syrian army has been fleeing from its positions from near the capital city. The Syrian government, remember, has lost control of the city of Dara after rebels arrested other key cities from its grip. Now, Hezbollah claims to have sent about 2,000 of its fighters to Syria to defend its positions there. The group has further added that it has not participated in any fighting so far. While Aleppo and Hama fell to an Islamist-led rebel alliance, Dara has fallen to a local armed group, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Now, earlier this week, the key rebel group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that was confined to northwest's Idlib region, made a surprise attack, taking over Aleppo in the north and also Hama in central Syria to reach closer to the capital city of Damascus. The rebel fighters and the residents were seen celebrating in the streets of Hama after the rebel forces who are linked to al-Qaeda took charge of the city. A video published by a group affiliated with the Syrian rebels on Thursday said that it has released the detainees who were seen pouring out of the Hama prison after the rebels freed them.
بدي احكي ايش ودون خلصنا من وين حضرتك خلصنا من حماه الله يهده خلصنا منه الله يحرق قلبه 500 مع نيمنا كل 50 واحد بغرفه الله يحرق قلبه مثل ما حرق قلب العالم.
Well, Russian and Syrian strikes have killed about 20 people near homes. Syria's defense ministry has said that it is conducting attacks north of the city with cover from the joint Syrian and the Russian Air Force. Now, fearing rebels' advance, tens of thousands of members of Assad's Alawite minority are reportedly fleeing from their homes from the city of Homs. So as the rebel forces continue to gain ground, the United Nations has said that at least about 370,000 people have been displaced by fighting in Syria since the 27th of November. And this includes 100,000 who have been forced to flee from their homes, not once, but more than once in this conflict so far. Meanwhile, Iran and Iraq have issued a joint statement with Syria warning that the sweeping rebel gains at the expense of government forces pose a danger to the whole region. During a visit to Baghdad, Iran's top diplomat Abbas Araghchi said that if Syria becomes a safe place for terrorists, then they should expect the return of the Islamic State and other terror outfits. Meanwhile, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has now opened his cards. He has said that he hopes that the Syrian rebels will continue with their advance against President Assad's forces, but he's also voiced concerns about what he said were terror outfits in their midst. Now, Erdogan's comments have underlined the very complex structure of the rebel forces who are fighting against Bashar al-Assad. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in the Syrian civil war, we're being joined by Mr. Khulud Helmi, who is a Syrian journalist and also co-founder and editor and board member of Inab Baladi newspaper. Now, Mr. Helmi, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast. Let me in fact start off by asking you this. What do you think is happening at this moment in this war, where the rebel forces seem to be gaining more and more ground, and there are reports that are now coming forth that some rebel forces may have even surrounded the capital city of Damascus?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for hosting me. The situation in Syria now is that the rebel forces coming from southern Syria, from Daraa mainly, and they enclaved the western Ghouta, including almost like all the cities and towns in eastern Ghouta, including the city where I come from, Daria, that was liberated in the term that by the rebel forces, and now they are arriving, like reaching the outskirts of Damascus. In the past week, to be honest, like when things started, no one was certain what's going on. The Syrian rebels that were thought to be affiliated to al-Qaeda, but the HTS, which is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, led the rebels, but like very recently, not very recently like now, but during the past 2 or 3 years, they started to change their perspectives, and they announced themselves that they are not al-Qaeda anymore. But what I am certain about as a Syrian journalist is most of the fighters, if not all of them, were Syrians from the cities that were displaced by the Syrian regime, forced to leave their cities, and they are packed in Idlib in northwest Syria. And now they gathered themselves and started liberating their own cities.
All right, you're describing the capture of these cities as a liberation. It's interesting there. But the question that I want to ask you is, you mentioned that most of these rebel fighters, you say, are Syrian nationals. But the fact is, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has been backed to the hilt by the Turks. Now, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in fact, came forth and made a statement that he'd like to see the rebels to go all the way until Damascus. Do you not think the HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, because of the support that they've received from Turkey, would be indebted to Turkey even if they were to end up capturing the land that they're doing?
We don't know. Like, as Syrians, we don't know. We hear that Turkey, Russia, and Iran were involved, but it seems lately that all the discussions and negotiations between Turkey, Russia, and Iran is not going anywhere. What we can see is that the Syrians themselves, the young men who left their cities, either as children forced to leave their cities, or the young men now are going back to their cities, liberating them and going back there. Now we have like the elevated numbers of IDPs in camps in Idlib, that people now have the right to go back to their homes.
And also, if I can just press one more aspect of this, Ms. Khulud Hilmi, if I can just press one more aspect of it. Yeah. How much popular support do you think these rebel forces actually enjoy amongst the people within Syria? And how much of a popular support does Bashar al-Assad have? Because he's been around for quite some time. So one would expect that a lot of people in Syria do support Assad, even though these rebels themselves may actually have a lot of support on their front. This is a very complex crisis. Tell us, how much of a support do each of these factions have in this war?
So what I can say now is that when the rebels entered Aleppo, people were not certain what's going to happen. But from what we have seen is that they left the people of Aleppo alone. They let them rule themselves. Especially the very complex and complicated situation in Aleppo, given the Christians and the Muslims and the very ethnicities there. And approaching Hama countryside, where we do have a lot of Ismailis and Druze and Christian villages as well, where they just like not like they just like they let them in, and the military people who went there, they just told them that you can rule your cities on your own.
Right.
So to be honest, the thing that is very obvious is that people are anticipating. Right. I'm not saying that people are not anxious, but the general or like the public atmosphere is that people are fine. Seems that people are waiting for an exit from the thing that we have been in for the past 14 years.
Right.
And it seems that the Assad regime is feeling its people. The army is surrendering. They're just leaving their fight, like the young fighters, they're leaving them. And the generals are leaving their places.
All right. Now, you are a Syrian journalist. You're joining us now from London. You know, one quick question before we let you go. A lot of people have in fact said that despite all the faults that Bashar al-Assad may have had, you know, he had managed to a very large extent keep the secular nature of Syria intact, considering that Syria is a very complex society. It's got the Sunnis, the Shias, the Druze, the Alawite community from which Bashar al-Assad himself belongs to, and the Christians, of course. A lot of people are saying that the Syrian rebels, who are much more hardline Islamists, if they were to take over, this secular nature of Syria may come to an end. What is your take on that?
So what we have seen so far is that they haven't overtaken the people. Like, the Christians are still Christians in Aleppo, and the Ismailis are still Ismailis in Salamiyah. and the Druze are still Druze in Sweden, I don't think that things are going to change, because the rebels, what you call them, the radical Islamists, they cannot shift the face of Syria because of the complexity of the Syrian map, ethnically speaking and religiously speaking. What I can see is that people are prepared that the civil society is going to take over, and then they might rule the cities, like the civil society of each and every city. Until then, we don't know what's going on. But I think now people are anticipating that the regime is failing. Russia is avoiding to support the regime. Iran is deteriorating from Syria. And Russia and Iran were the hardcore supporters of the Assad regime. So we don't know what is going to unfold, but currently this is where we are in.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Khulud Helmi, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you very much.